The Essential Education Projector range from Hitachi sponsors ICT programs.
We're looking for multiples of 7 today.
If you haven't got a whiteboard yet, the chances are you will have access to one soon. The DFES wants every primary school to have at least 2. Simon Botton has been using a whiteboard with his Year 4 class for the last 5 years, and here are some of his ideas that will help you get the most from yours.
Oh, she's flying. OK, you've had your board, you've got it in, you've had those few months where you're just playing with it, getting used to it, making sure it doesn't do horrible things to you when you're, press it and that sort of thing. Now it's time to really think, right, how am I going to shape my lesson with this? And you've really got to think, OK, I need to use this as a really good tool. The platform's the main thing that runs your board. So it's the piece of software which drives the board, but also has the main tools to help you annotate and write and create those pages which you're going to use in your lesson. So I got to use my whiteboard more effectively just by pressing a button and seeing what it did. Don't be afraid to go out and see what all of the buttons do on your whiteboard. If you haven't pressed a button and you don't know what it does, make it your job to find out. Chris, would you like to come and tell me what you did?
Well, I saw that 14 add 5 was 19, so I added 5 each time and it added up to 34.
So in my maths lesson, a good example of understanding your platform was to use one of the animation tools on the platform, and it allows me to show and reveal numbers. Now that's really useful if you're doing something like number sequences, and it's just a way of helping move the lesson along in a slightly more interactive way than perhaps you could have done with a normal whiteboard. Here's a problem for you. You don't just have to have one platform open at a time or one program running at a time. So I happen to use 2 platforms, one that came free with the board, one that we bought, and it gives me a bit more flexibility. It means that if I want to write something which I only want to appear on the screen for a little while, then I can write that and then delete it on that one toolbar. And then if I want to write something which goes on to a longer time, I can write it on the other toolbar and it stays on the screen. It just gives me, as I say, a little bit more room to manoeuvre. Let's go back to where we started. All the boards that you get on the market these days, with the tools that you get with them, the platforms that you buy with them, they will have clip art images already preloaded onto them, and they're the easiest and simplest way to get into using images on your whiteboard. Clip art images can be used really well to help the children access prior learning. If you put an image in which they're not expecting, then that can actually help reminding them of something that they saw or did the day before. So for example, in this maths lesson, we've got a picture of a kangaroo. It's got nothing to do with the maths, but there's a picture of a kangaroo in the day before's lesson, and immediately they start to make that connection with what they've done previously. We'll see if you can give us the answer today. I don't know if it's going to work or not.
Don't be ridiculous, I'm a kangaroo.
No, getting a clip art image is incredibly easy. All I have to click on is Resources, Multimedia Bank, go into my clip art, and they're already listed there for me. I can choose what I want. So, OK, I want to do a lesson on money. So here's some money. I can drag it out, stick it on the page. Simple as that. It's good to think about the power of the visual image. Having a big image on the screen as the children come through the door is really quite powerful, especially if you're starting something new like we were today on the River Severn. Getting that image, making that emotional connection straight away, they're starting to get in their mind some kind of context to what they're about to learn. I happened to stumble across a picture of some children doing some canoeing on the River Severn, getting wet. So immediately children would think, this is something I like, it's something that's interesting to me. And by getting them involved with just that image, you've got them from when they come through the door, and that's so important. Who's got some words for me? Any words at all? Give me some words. Rosie.
Dangerous.
Why danger?
Because it's got whirlpools in it and stuff.
There is an unlimited amount of images you can get off the internet. You'll do a search for something you want, let's say River Severn, that's what we're doing for our geography topic. And what it brings up is lots of thumbnails of pictures of the River Severn which are within other websites. So what I've got to make sure I do if I'm doing an image search is to actually click on the picture itself and then click on See Full Size Image, because that will show it the real size it is. Now that's a nice big size picture. I can copy that, and when I paste that, it puts that picture nice and big without any distortion onto the page.
Can anyone tell me any of the features that they mentioned, anything they can see on that picture that was mentioned in the video?
Another real advantage with interactive whiteboards is we can actually use resources in a much more powerful and detailed way than we could before.
You do get a waterfall. You can probably just get a kind of little tiny trickly waterfall here, isn't it? It's not a big one like they showed there, but yeah, it's quite steep, isn't it?
The lesson plan said, show the children the picture of the V-shaped valley, which is about so big. And you're trying to point out interlocking spurs and all these other detailed things, but they just can't see it. Now, with our interactive whiteboard, stick it under a scanner, scan it in, obviously check your copyright, and then they can all see it. They can come up to the board, they can interact with it.
Joss, come point to the V-shaped valley for me. Actually, could you draw it for me?
It makes that connection with what they're doing on paper and the real world in a way which has the scale that you need in order to be able to understand the activity, and that's a real advantage.
Very good. Large boulders in the river. Well, I don't want to do it all for you, so with the person next to you, I'm going to give you, I think 3 minutes is plenty on this.
One little tip, which I'm sure if you've used an interactive whiteboard for more than a couple of months, you will know is that sort of pain, is the things sliding around the screen when you don't want them to. So most platforms now have an opportunity to lock the image down. In utilities, I can just click on the image, click on padlock, and now that image won't go anywhere.
After 3, 1, 2, 3. Today we will be learning how to persuade.
Presentation is really important. If not to you, then it's just to the children. They are used to a very, very highly polished entertainment environment when they go home and watch the telly. And they're going to expect more and more from you as far as what you actually show on screen. So just popping a bit of text on the screen in a tiny font isn't going to do it for them.
OK, so we're looking at persuasive language. Now, we did some work on this last half term. Remember, we did some work on leaflets in advertising. What we're looking at is how people persuade you to do things. In this case, vote for them.
As well as having the learning objective up there, I started with some images which they're familiar with. They drew the children in, lots of colour. It started the lesson off with something the children could have some kind of link to.
Let's get started. Let's see if we can get this to work.
Keeping the type of media varied is another way of keep the children involved. So the next part we had was a video. They weren't expecting it. They didn't come in that morning expecting to see party election broadcast booming out of the whiteboard in the classroom. So immediately those children who thought, this is something that doesn't interest me, were immediately jolted them back to life and maybe think, hang on, maybe this is something I'm going to be wanting to take part in. And it just made sure everybody was really involved from the outset of the lesson.
Pause it there for a second. Who can tell me words they've heard so far? Persuasive words, words that make you think, oh, that sounds good. Ian?
Britain is a good country.
Moving on from that, we used a screenshot of a web page which we copied off the internet.
What's this table here showing? It's probably quite small for you there.
Presentation points to mention here. We use two things. First of all, we use the zoom in tool to look at things in a particular close-up, which allow the children to see something much more clearly than if you're just pointing to this tiny graph in the corner of the screen.
The page, what do you see? We're not looking at the words yet, we're looking at the images, the things around the page. What can you see? Robbie, what can you see on this page? Can you see any pictures anywhere?
Although I wanted the children to see this website in its entirety so they could get a feel as to how it was laid out on the page, I also wanted them to look at the text specifically. Now, I couldn't actually make this any bigger because of the way it was put together on the website. So what I did is I copied that up then and actually just increased the font size, made it really clear, left some space at either side of the text so that I could annotate around it. If you've made the text too big, it goes right to the margins, you don't have any way to write, so you'll be writing all over the text and it'll just look a mess and the children won't know what your notes mean. So for example, in this lesson, what I did is I actually cut each paragraph into Microsoft Word, and then from there increase the font size and then cut and paste it back into my platform so it looked how I wanted it to look. On this particular program I can use a split screen mode where I can show 2 pages at the same time, so I don't have to have the children all working on the same activity. I can split between the two. If I want to make one larger to explain something to one group, I can bring that one up larger, or I can show them both just to remind each group and draw together all those strands which helped us meet the objective of the lesson.
How does you know what you've got to do now?
There's a real tendency here, if you've had a board for a couple of months, you know, what tends to happen is to start with, people might just use 1 page and put a few things on that, feel very pleased with themselves the first week or so. Then they might try 2 pages, and then by the end of the 3rd week they might have 8 or 9 pages, and before you know it you're putting in far too much content for the children. And I was as guilty of this as anybody else on the first year. As soon as I found to do something, I thought, oh great, I'll put another page doing this in it. And you've got to watch that you're not spending too much of the lesson doing all the talking while the children watch you doing all these whizzy things you've learned to do on your whiteboard. So think, what is the learning objective for each particular part of that lesson? If I want to show something on the board, why am I showing it in that way? If I don't need to show it, if I'm just doing it because I can, that's not a good enough reason.
Find hot and cold places on a map.
You can keep that pace in the lesson that you wouldn't get using that traditional board where you've got to stop, you've got to wipe everything off, spend a few minutes. All those bits of dead time are gone, and you can start to use the resources to keep that pace going, moving from teacher explanation to teacher explanation, keeping the lesson flowing. All the way up the top there, yes, in Canada. And we're going to start today's lesson by having a little think about what this place is like. Keep it snappy, keep thinking, OK, I want to have a page that's going to grab the children's interest, so some kind of warm-up, like we do in numeracy.
What you do is, if you see a multiple of 7, you hit it.
So something really whizzy and really snappy.
Claire, quick!
Great games on the internet, especially for numeracy. Get something up on the board, get them running around, get a bit of a frantic thing going. They're up there, they're stabbing away at numbers on the board, but the maths is really starting to seep through. And by the end of the activities, you've got them in your pocket. They'll follow you through that lesson because they really want to see what's going to happen next.
Let's go back to where we started. We started off with a problem like this.
Then you can move on to the main content of the lesson, where you're starting to put in the points you're trying to get across, and actually think to yourself, OK, I've got this resource where I can get media from all over the place. How can I actually show this in a way which adds value to other than just putting text on the board?
And if we know the first 2 numbers, it's easy, we know the step size. Talk through how you would solve this sum, and when you've got the answer, put your hands on your head and look incredibly pleased with yourself. Off you go.
And finishing off, as we always do, we call it Let's Show What We Know. It's your plenary. It reminds you to do it, it reminds the children it's something really important in the lesson, gets them again to think about their learning. I can go back, look at the objective, and it's taking me through the whole process of the lesson. I can use it in a way which suits me.
Any hands on heads?
You've got this wonderful resource. It does take a bit of time to learn, but spend a bit of time learning how to use the resources and you'll really get much more out of it. The children will get much more out of it, and you'll be using that resource to its full potential.
And again, and again. No.
And then 3.35.
Essential education projectors from Hitachi sponsor ICT programs.